Welcome back to KLM in the Yibneh Base Midrash. What a merit in Elul! The month of Elul. I've got a very important question for you. Two questions, okay? How do you react when someone asks you for tzedakah? Question number one, okay? Number two, how do you respond to all those requests online from organizations, Torah organizations, charity organizations, etc.? How do you respond, right? So here's my recommendation. With extreme enthusiasm, okay? That's what I want to explain to you. I want you to realize how amazing tzedakah is, how amazing supporting Torah is, all right? So let's start with a few stories, true stories. Years ago in the yeshiva, I was one of the fundraisers, and I went to Bnei Baruch, and I saw a certain alumni from the yeshiva. He had a wealthy father, thank God, and they raised money for a KLM, Torah learning, married Torah learning. And so we were telling fundraiser war stories. It's not easy to be a fundraiser. In fact, the famous Rabbi Noah Weinberg, right, who founded Aish Torah. So he was a very deep thinker, and he thought about the future, meaning the world to come. So he imagined himself in the world to come, and they say it's the entry gate, right? So they say, do you have a mask? No, I'm kidding. No, they say it's the entry gate, and they say to him, what did you do to deserve to come into the world to come? So he thinks he's ready. So he says, I did kiruv. I brought Jews closer to the Torah. So he imagined he's going to hear the following voice. I'm sorry. Now you're surprised, right? They said, you received so much honor for that you got all your reward here in this world. That's what he said. He says, you got just so much honor, right? So he says, well, tell us what else you did. He says, I did fundraising. He said, come on in. You don't get a lot of honor in this world for fundraising. But you should know, the Gemara says that greater is the person who actually causes someone to do a mitzvah than the actual doer, right? So it's very big. But now here's a real story, okay? I mean, not that that's not super significant. Listen to this, okay? This was over 30 years ago. There was, thank God, a lot of non-religious Israelis were doing tshuva and coming back, and they wanted to raise their kids with Torah education. Now, the schools weren't really equipped. Let's say a kid, the parents became religious and the kid's already 9 years old. So to fit them into the current Torah schools for young kids wasn't easy. So they decided they would open up a set of Hadarim, Torah schools, for these newly religious Israelis, right? That would gear to them. Very good cause, correct? Okay? So they go to the United States and they go to fundraise. That's classic America, right? So they went to Lakewood. And these were, by the way, very important, distinguished rabbis. They go to Lakewood and they get to meet with a man who was supporting half the budget of Lakewood. What was the budget of Lakewood at the time? $22 million a year. And he was giving $11 million a year. So the rabbis, they look at him, they said, how did you have the merit to support Lakewood like this? He says, I can tell you, I'm sure I know the reason. Okay, so we had to scroll back. So that was in the 1980s, let's say 90s, that that happened, maybe 2000. Scroll back to the Depression in New York. Excuse me. And we know how rough it was for Jews, because if you wanted to observe the Shabbat, you started your job on, let's say, Sunday, Monday, and you got a pink slip if you didn't break the Shabbos, right? Terrible challenge. So there's one, religious man, and he was a strong person, his family was strong, and he just refused to work on Shabbos. So he lost this job and that job. Let's say it was in Brooklyn, someplace like that. Job after job he lost, and basically had a few kids too, 6, 7 kids, and he's basically homeless with his family. Terrible, right? So I think he was probably a Jewish man who had a factory, a clothing factory, something like this, and he took Rahmanis on this poor family, and he said, you know what, I have some room in the boiler room of the factory. You and your family can sleep there, okay? Not easy, right? Okay, some time passes. Now, it's a street of Brooklyn, and there's a wealthy Jewish man who's not religious, right? And he goes down the street and he sees these kids playing, and they used to call baseball at the time stickball, right? They played stickball, and he sees these little black kids, and they're playing stickball, but they're speaking Yiddish. And he said, I never saw something like this ever, these little black boys speaking Yiddish. And then he gets closer, and he sees it's soot on their faces, right? These are the Jewish kids that were in the boiler room. He thought they were black, right? And so what happens? He says, take me to your father. So he sees the father, and he says, he feels for him, and his heart goes out, and he gives him $1,000. Okay, now $1,000 in 1930, 1929, that's a lot of money, right? So he goes, sees his wife, and he says, Baruch Hashem, we're out of here, and he says, this Jewish man came and gave me $1,000. So the wife says, let me just ask you a question. Was the man who gave you, was he religious? Was he Shomer Shabbat? And he says, I don't know, probably not. He says, you give that money back to him. We don't want to accept that money. So he listens to his wife. He tracks down the man. He asks him, excuse me, I just want to, do you observe Shabbat? He says, no. He says, sorry, we can't take the money, right? So that wealthy, non-religious man goes home, speaks to his wife, and he says, you won't believe what happened. These, and they took back the money because, we don't observe Shabbat. So the wife says to him, his wife, or the wealthy man says, when we first got here and you couldn't keep a job, you told me it was pekuach nefesh, it was life-threatening for us to not work on Shabbat. So I accepted. But now that we're wealthy, I don't understand why we don't keep the Shabbat. And if we don't keep the Shabbat from now on, I'm giving you a divorce. So the husband accepts it. And now let's go back to Lakewood. This man who's supporting half of Lakewood says, that was my great-grandfather, and he married the family of the poor family. They married, he married the daughter of the poor people. So the two people ended up marrying together, right? Those two families. And he understood that kind of self-sacrifice and commitment to Torah, that's why I had the merit to have so much money and to be able to support Lakewood. Now, why am I telling you that story? Because why didn't the rabbis get this meeting with this person who's making $11 million a year, and he's religious, great, he can support Torah causes, etc. So they didn't ask him, what do you do for a living? They didn't ask that. They said, how did you get such a merit to support Torah and to support such a whole Torah town, right? So what do we learn from this? That if you really understand, how should you respond when you get a request to support Torah, to support that? With great enthusiasm. It's such a merit. If you're in shul, right? The people come in and you're like, the guy comes in. Rav Tzaddik Cohen says, do you realize that you have to thank Hashem when a poor person comes and asks you for money? What a merit! What a merit! And in fact, I saw this one rabbi, he took it so seriously. You know what he said? You know, what usually happens if you're davening and they're coming in and they have their bags and they're asking for money, you're like this. He says, get up from your seat and go to them. Yeah, you realize what a merit they're giving you? Go to them. I tried doing that. You get the point more when you do that, okay? So my first point is, it is a tremendous merit, and the more spiritually enlightened you are, the more you realize that. That's why the guy didn't say, yeah, well, I worked hard and I made some good deals. He says, my grandparents were so self-sacrificing for Shabbos and Torah and et cetera, et cetera. It's a merit. It's such a merit, okay? So that's point number one, why it's important. Now, I want to next explain to you how amazing tzedakah is for you, me, for us, for those who give it. Okay, listen to this, okay? This is in Mishlei, and there are two verses in Mishlei. By the way, wait, just let me back up slightly. Why am I talking about all this? Because it's Elul? It's because it's almost Rosh Hashanah, right? And what do we say on Rosh Hashanah? Let me set this up first. We say that Tshuva, tefillah, tzedakah, ma'avirim ro'es gezerah, right? Doing tshuva, repenting, obviously, praying to Hashem for your life. But tzedakah, they tear up a bad decree, okay? All right, so now we want to understand this, the dynamics of this better. So let's go to Mishlei. Listen to this. Listen to what it says in two places in Mishlei. First is in the 10th parak, the pasuk base, second pasuk. It says like this: Lo yo'ilu otzros resha. The storehouses of wickedness won't help. Yo'ilu means help. Utzedakah tatzel memavis. By contrast, tzedakah rescues from death. So you have storehouses of ill-gotten gain, won't help. On the other end of the spectrum, tzedakah saves from death. One more pasuk, okay? It says in Mishlei, in Parak Yud Aleph, pasuk Dal 11:4, similar language, okay? Lo yo'il hon, wealth won't help, biyom evra, on the day of anger. U'tzedakah tatatzel memavis, and tzedakah rescues from death. Okay, so Shlomo Melech says 2 times that tzedakah rests from death. Well, we don't accept repetition. You know, he has to be telling you something different each time, and that's what the Vilna Gaon explains. So first, let's talk about the Vilna Gaon says to understand all this, you have to understand what is money for. What do people use money for? Okay? And this isn't his own theory. It's hinted to in the Navi. There's 3 categories. Arev, sweets, yo'il, benefit, and tov, good. Okay? In other words, your money, you have your investment decisions are as follows. You're going to use money for pleasures of this world. Okay? You're going to be, that's number 1. Number 2, yo'il. You're going to use it for in times of need. You need a medical expense, insurance, shelter, right? So that's another thing. Use money for practical needs, okay? Third is good. What is using your money for good? Charity and kindness, right? You're helping others with your money. So the 3 uses. Now, let's look at the first one. It said, Otzros Resha. A wicked person stores it, he does it, maybe embezzles, he cheats a little, and he's got a lot of money. He's got storehouses. So it says it won't help. What does that mean? He'll be able to get all the sweets he wants. Nice cars, jacuzzi, fancy. That he's going to get. But Shlomo Melech says, guess what? When he needs it for some medical operation, it's not going to be there. It's not going to work. We're sorry, but there's no operation to help you, God forbid, right? So that's if you use your money for bad. You can have a good time, but it's not going to help you. Now, let's go to tzedakah, right? Tzedakah is the expenditure is pure good. You're being good, right? And yet, in terms of helping, it helps you to the degree that there could have been a decree that Plony gets in a car accident and he'll be spared because he gives tzedakah. So it helps to the ultimate that it can save your mortal human life here. But says the Vilna Gaon, not just that, it's going to help you for everything. Everything between the greatest need in this world to that, it helps for, right? Sounds good, right? Now let's go to the other one. Now let's contrast not cheating and theft versus tzedakah. Now we're saying wealth. Someone's wealthy. Now, if they're wealthy, their money can help them a lot. Yeah, they can have sweets and it'll help them. But let's say they don't give tzedakah, right? They don't give that so much, but they don't cheat. They hard earn money with integrity. Can help. However, it can't help on the day of anger, okay? I'm going to talk about Gehenna, the punishment of the world to come for a second. In a previous class I explained, we avoid talk about things that makes us uncomfortable, and no one likes to feel afraid and anxious. But when you do it as a mitzvah, you'll be safe and you'll be elevated and you'll be strengthened. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Gehenna for a second. Okay, the Ramban says like this. It's been some very hard times lately, right? But I think no one had a harder time than Job, right? Now Job had the hardest of times because Hashem permitted, events to go against him, to test him, etc. And he had the worst things. He had, lost his property in a big immediate thing, lost children. What's worse than that? Hashem Yerachem, right? Terrible physical sight. He had all the worst thing for years and years and years and years, right? So it says that Ramban, right? Nachman, and he says like this. He says, if we understood what 1 second of Gehenna is like, he says, we would say, Hashem, give me 70 years of Eov's challenges and suffering and pain. God forbid, right? So you don't want to be there for a second. Now listen to this. This is unbelievable. So a person who had a lot of wealth and this and that, it may help them now. But if they did wrong things and they have Gehenna coming to them, it's coming and it's terrible, right? So listen to this. If you gave tzedakah, if you did good with your money, says the Vilna Gaon, they'll say, no, skip it. He doesn't have to have Gehenna. All right? Now, I don't know if it's total whatever, but so you hear, it rescues from death in this world, and it rescues from death in the world to come. Amazing, right? Amazing. So now, by the way, now we understand why we say tzedakah ma'avirim raha gezerah, right? Charity, because the judgment on Rosh Hashanah, for life, everyone's asking for life, right? And everyone should have life, please God. But the thing is this, everyone's asking for life. What life? Life in this world or life in the world to come? So it's a debate, okay? It's a debate. Some say this, some say that, some say both, okay? But you can't lose with tzedakah. It saves from death in this world, and it saves from death in the world to come. You hear this? It's such a good investment, okay? Now I'm just going to come to the final part, which is two more parts. Now I understand why is tzedakah so great. Why is it so great in the eyes of Hashem, right? So here's the idea, and I think everyone knows. I asked my son on the way here, does he know what a mirage is? And he certainly should, because Israel is surrounded by desert, And they say it's incredible. If you've ever seen the pictures of it, I know most people know, but you're in a desert, and you're dying of thirst, and then you see like an oasis, you see water, right? And you would, if you will, swear by it that there's water there, but it's an optical illusion, okay? So you get there and there's no water there, right? That's a mirage, okay? So there's two mirages that occur with money, okay? Let's take a wicked person, right, who uses, according to the Mishlei, he has storehouses, he has bank accounts in Switzerland, right? So it looks like it's there, but when it comes to times of need, it's not there, it's a mirage, okay? Now with tzedakah, it's a reverse mirage. You're taking the money out of your pocket, you're putting on your credit card, you know, Yibbaneh, KLM, you know, you're supporting Yad Sarah, you're doing that. It looks like the money's leaving you, right? But it's there for you in the most profound way, right? Now, what's the greatness, though, of tzedakah? Is that takes emunah, right? Because emunah is that it's not clear to you at the time that what you're doing is going to be good and good for you. But you trust in Hashem, right? So I saw that they bring like this. It says that it's very interesting. It says Avram Avinu, he believed in Hashem. Now it wasn't early on, but it said he believed in Hashem, and Hashem considered it like tzedakah. Okay, his emunah was compared to tzedakah. Now what they explained is, when was that said? That was after he, despite being told he's going to bring the Jewish people have children, his wife and he were aging and they had no ability to have children, and he's told he'll be in Israel and he's kicked out of Israel. He could have a lot of doubt in Hashem's promises, and yet he marched forward. He was even willing to sacrifice his only son, etc., right? So that emunah, right, see, that was like tzedakah, because he's acting with faith and doing things even though right now it doesn't look like it's good for him. It's just like tzedakah. When you pull out of your own personal resources and give of your moadecha, right, it looks like you're losing, but you have a promise from Hashem, right? And so that's why it's such a powerful thing. It's such an expression of emunah, okay? That's why it's so big. Now, this is KLM. And I hope I've inspired you about how powerful tzedakah is. And I hope you'll do it. And I hope when you're in shul, you'll get up and tackle the guy and give him some money, or right? So, but let's have the thing the reason I got this whole KLM started, Kavanah the mitzvahs that you're doing, is when you think I'm doing the mitzvah beforehand, it enhances it so much, right? Because we just do it, we feel good, we forget to think about, hey, Hashem commanded me, I'm doing it because you asked me to, Hashem, because I love you, okay? So I'm going to show you a little scheme to remember the mitzvahs of tzedakah, and that's how we're going to finish off. You're going to know what the mitzvahs are, and I please God hope you'll have them in mind. Okay, after we just heard what an amazing thing tzedakah is, and why you're amazing when you give it, right? So I said, wouldn't it be a shame not to maximize the giving by doing it for sure as a mitzvah to Hashem? So I came up with a thing. We said that tzedakah tears the bad decree. T-E-A-R-S. It tears. So this is how you can remember the mitzvahs. And by the way, if you're interested, we're going to create a chart to remember this, and that'll be in the description box below. Or send me an email and request it. That's the best way. But first, let's look at the 5 mitzvahs that you can get. So, and this just takes a moment of thought, okay? You know, it's funny because since I started this focus on reminding people, have in mind, take a second, think about this, and you've just changed it. So like, I'm doing it like I'm nagging my kids, I'm nagging my wife. Don't forget to have this in mind before she goes to sleep. Have in mind taking care of yourself before you go to sleep, etc., etc. And I was doing it in the yeshiva. So this one guy said, you know, I think Rabbi Wegbreit cares about our olam haba, our eternity, more than we do. so I do, I really do. Okay, and that's what we're doing at KLM. So have in mind tzedakah, the mitzvah tzedakah when you give. Okay, you just maximized by just 2 seconds thought. Then emulating Hashem. Hashem pours, he gives, he cares for people's physical needs. That's what you do, and you spread the word of Hashem in the world. You're emulating Hashem. Okay, so that's ahavta l'reacha kamocha. Just like your well-being and your financial status is important to you, express your love by taking care of others and helping others, loving a neighbor like yourself. And this we just spoke about. What's so great about tzedakah? A tzaddik be'emunah yichyeh, a righteous person lives by emunah. The mitzvah tzedakah is you're acting like a righteous person. You're living by emunah because you're trusting that you'll take away from yourself to give to others, and He'll take care of you. Right? So righteous live by emunah. And finally, as always, do this for simcha. I told you, you see a cause, a worthy cause, you see a poor person, say, wow, what a merit I have, that I have possessions that I can give to other people. I can share the wealth, right? So I just can't stress enough how valuable it is right now. And I want to make a special appeal, first of all for Yibineh, because of all the Torah they're putting out in the world. And also they work on Hesed too, which is a huge investment. And also at KLM we're doing a campaign too, because I think you can recognize that you're changing people's eternal connection by just giving them an awareness of how much they can connect and do mitzvahs that bond them to Hashem tremendously. So I just would say that it's a very big mitzvah to support the Yibineh Drive and the KLM Drive. And if you look in the subscription box below, you'll see a link to those sites. And if you do it, just realize it tears bad degrees. So have in mind, tzedakah, emulating Hashem's kindness and giving. Ahavta l'reacha kamocha, loving Hashem like you're loving others like you love yourself. Righteous people live through their emunah. Their emunah is expressed by their giving and their mitzvahs, and doing it b'simcha. Okay.